Are you new to investing? Wondering whether or not you can self-manage your properties? Let us tell you about our partner, RentRedi. RentRedi is an awesome property management software that can help you grow and handle every aspect of your real estate investing business. Rent collection, tenant screening, maintenance, lease signing, listing. Honestly, RentRedi has everything.
One of the best features is their new tenant software, Latchel, where you're able to remove yourself as the landlord from being the middleman between tenants and maintenance calls. And it's also essentially a fraction of the cost of what you would pay for property management.
Let me also mention that RentRedi is unlimited. All their plans are flat price. This means you can keep adding properties to your portfolio without having to pay more. You can close on all the properties you want, and RentRedi's price stays the same. Best part about it is for you guys is they've given us an amazing deal to pass on to all Weekly Juice listeners. You can get 50% off any RentRedi plan at rentredi.com when you use our code JuicePod. That's rentredi.com, rentredi.com with code JuicePod, JUICEPOD, and you'll get 50% off any plan. If this is your first time here, welcome. During our shows, we interview successful entrepreneurs and investors to spread knowledge, advice, and actionable tactics to help others in the pursuit of financial freedom. We discuss successes, failures, systems, motivations, experiences, and key lessons learned along the way in the hopes that these stories help you along your journey. Tune in every Wednesday to get your weekly juice. If you've been here before and like what you've been hearing, please subscribe, share with friends, rate and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. That goes an extremely long way for us. It's simple. Just click on your podcast app, type in our podcast name, The Weekly Juice, click on the reviews, and let us know what you think. The more ratings we get, the more eyes we'll get on our show, and in turn, we'll be able to provide you all with high-quality guests. You can also find us on Instagram at Weekly Juice Pod for daily content and personal finance tips to assist in your journey towards financial freedom. Welcome back to the Weekly Juice. As always, Ryan and Corey here with another episode for you. Today we have on special guest Ryan Barone. He is the co-founder and CEO of RentRedi, the property management software we currently use and absolutely love. They're actually our partner. Now, caveat to this episode, it's not a sales pitch. We dive into Ryan himself as an entrepreneur and essentially how he created the app from the ground up and why he created it and the special features that it includes. And
yeah, I don't think you mentioned this. He's 25 or 26, like somewhere in that mid to late 20s. And we talk about how the app actually wasn't intended to be what it is today. So it's really cool to watch the inception of the app from he was doing it because he was trying to find an apartment for himself to live in Manhattan. It was like, this process sucks. Like all this paperwork, all these things, streamline that. And then it ended up being a property management software for landlords. And now has just completely taken off. So again, not a sales pitch. It's really more of an episode about his story, but we do throw some features of RentRedi in there because we just want to share it with the world.
Let's bring in Ryan. Ryan, officially welcome to the Weekly Juice. We are thrilled to have you. If you could kind of give people a background on who you are, where you're from, and then essentially your claim to fame. Like, why the heck are we interviewing you today? That'd be great if you could tell everybody.
I like it. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Ryan Barone. I'm from upstate New York initially. And then the claim to fame is RentRedi. So been working on that for about 5 years now, and it's been the most enjoyable thing I've ever done.
That's awesome. So you are the co-founder and CEO of RentRedi. That's our premier partner of the show. So we're thrilled to work with you also, but this is going to be fun for us to get to know you a bit and kind of just dive into who you are, the inception of RentRedi, and then kind of your life as an entrepreneur. So with that, if you could kick it off, can you give us essentially the inception story of RentRedi and how it came to be?
Definitely. Yeah. So I was going to school in New York City at Pace University. At the time, I had just gotten my first summer internship. I was very excited to be staying there in New York City for the summer and working there. But that also meant I had to go get a new place to live, get my first apartment. And so it wasn't too dissimilar from many other people's first rental story of, I went there with bright eyes, expecting from these listing sites that they were going to make it really easy to rent an apartment. And what I quickly found out was that they had made it really easy to find an apartment, but not necessarily rent it. There was a lot more to renting than just finding, which I had no idea about at the time. And so I found this place in downtown Manhattan. Was very excited to get it. Showed up, said I'd like to, rent the place. And they told me we need W-2, letter of employment, bank statement, tax return, student transcript. I had 2 roommates at the time, all of which I'd guarantor. So all the same things for them. And we ultimately didn't get that apartment, didn't get the next couple. And I left that experience feeling like I was really bad at renting, which I probably was at the time. But I came to find that a lot of other people had that same experience. And so initially I was just building an app for myself and friends, an iOS app, to pull together all of our documents for our application so that when a landlord did say, hey, I want you to apply, I could just hit a button and submit it and they would have everything they needed. And the really interesting thing was they quickly came back to me and said, wait, our side's just as bad, if not worse than yours. Everything that's been out there has focused on these massive property management companies. And, the smaller landlords that are managing it all themselves are basically left to spreadsheets, and they didn't want that either. And so they were really looking for a way to make it easier for them and their tenants. And that problem went a lot more beyond applications, which I, later realized there was a lot more to the problem than applications, and probably a lot of other people would have a similar experience where, you start your business and somewhere along the way you realize there's maybe a lot more to the issue, that what you started with was kind of just the tip of the iceberg.
That's hilarious. So like the business didn't really even intend to be what it is today. It kind of formed along the way, right?
Right. Yeah. It's so funny. I mean, the application part of the RentRedi app is now like one piece of the whole grand scheme. That was the whole app at one point, but now, I mean, it's totally end to end from the day you list your apartment to the day the next lease ends, all across the spectrum of payments and maintenance that did not, exist in the initial idea of what I was trying to solve from my personal experience.
It's very cool because Ryan and I live in the Philadelphia area, but we've never actually tried to get an apartment in like downtown Manhattan, like the hottest place to try to get an apartment. I almost didn't even know that it's like as competitive as purchasing a home. Like it's like all those things that you mentioned, I'm thinking like, wow, they really strip you down and try to get all this information. So right. It's very cool to hear the inception of how it started. I'm curious kind of what happened next and how did it take form to what RentRedi is presently? Yeah.
So the next stage was really getting involved with some landlords. And we started out initially with a small group that was a part of an association down actually in New Jersey. We'd done a focus group with landlords ranging from one single family home up to a couple thousand units. And we're basically talking with them about what were their problems. And that has really stayed a huge core of what we still are today. I mean, we have live chat and we've had that since day one. And what a lot of people don't realize is they think it's help for them, which it is, but in a lot of ways it's how we figured out what should we be doing. And I think it applies to almost anything, any business you would do, but the more feedback, the more input you can get from the person you're trying to solve the problem from, the better product or service you can offer. And so they quickly started to talk about things like, oh, the check is in the mail excuse, where, you told me you mailed it to me, and then I end up opening it up and it's a National Grid check that I have to send back to you, and then you have to send that back. So how do I eliminate that? And so that was where the whole idea for, real-time recording of a payment, the second that someone initiates it, it shows on there. So you eliminate that lag. Or the video for maintenance was honestly talking with another landlord on the platform that said, a leaking sink is not a leaking sink. If it's destroying my kitchen floor, or you can put a bowl under it, that completely changes how I respond to a 2 a.m. maintenance request that says leaking sink. So if you can show me a video of the issue, it's a complete game changer. And so that's pretty much where, everything on the platform, from that to lease signing, listing, automated late fees, everything has been, an individual landlord story or multiple landlord stories or tenants saying, this is my problem. This is what would solve it. Can you make something that bridges that gap?
We're a case study about RentRedi. This happened. So Ryan's telling the truth. I remember I had, in the beginning when we first got started, somebody from your team, I was chatting with them, just trying to figure out how the program worked. And I said, hey, what about this? Like me and Ryan, Ryan, like we use this, we run our business a certain way. I'm wondering if this feature is available. And like within days, your team was like, this is a great idea. Like, let's implement this. I don't remember what it was, but the adaptation to the clientele is like, it's a rare thing. And not a lot of businesses, especially these types of apps, they're maybe not paying attention to what the actual market needs. So
I would say the customer service is amazing too. Like I just remember from the live chats, you just get so many people that are super friendly, right? And they get right back to you. They ask for your email, then they're hitting you with an email, checking up, following up, like, hey, how did it go? And not just like the surveys. I hate when you get those surveys like, hey, rate Jaleesa, how did she do today? It's like a one-on-one with Sam, like, tell me what I did, and then go back and forth, and then they pump it up the ladder. So I think that's awesome. And I know I've been checking our mutual email, and he's been back and forth with so many members of your team asking questions. I'm like, no wonder the app's so good that you're giving them all the feedback that they could possibly ever have. But there's a lot of different, so the market's like semi-saturated in this field of, there's a lot of different property management softwares and software to help landlords. What do you think sets RentRedi apart? And like, what's your competitive advantage here in a market like this?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the really interesting things is we are actually one of the only, if not the only, that was not started by landlords and property managers, which you would think counterintuitively would be a huge negative. But the nice part is, and really what has been a huge strength of why I think done so well so far, is because we don't have any preconceived notions about like what is the right way or wrong way. And so we really approach everything with a blank slate of just talk to the landlords and property managers themselves. It's not based on, an individual founder's experience of how they rented their particular property. It's based on thousands of landlords' experiences across all 50 states of different issues they've had and different cases that they've had to solve it. So, I mean, even something like late fees, where in some states you might have a hard cap on what that late fee can be in terms of dollar value. In other states is actually based on a percentage. So like we know that because we talk to different landlords in different states that had different issues. And so we do allow them to set either no max because you're in a state that doesn't require it, or you're a percentage cap because you're in a state that requires that, or a dollar cap because you're in a state that requires that. And so it's flexible based on that, or even to the next stage of where some landlords would say, yeah, I have some in Massachusetts where there's a cap on late fees, but I also have some in Pennsylvania where there might not be. And so I need to be able to set that up differently for different units. So it's not just going to be a global setting on this. So honestly, I think the biggest, superpower, if you will, of the team and the way we approach it is the fact that pretty much everything gets built by talking to so many different people, getting so much of their feedback, and then designing something that fits everybody's bill.
Perfect. I think I wanted to give everyone a little brief intro of you and RentRedi and how it functions. And I think we've accomplished that. One of the things that I think we should get into a little bit is just business in general and your experience as an entrepreneur. We have a lot of listeners to our show that want to become entrepreneurs, are entrepreneurs, and it plays into investing, real estate, financial independence, but entrepreneurship really is the core of this. And anyone can start a business, but that doesn't mean the business is going to be successful. So I'm curious, what are some steps that you took in the beginning? And you can humble brag here for us. We can handle it. We can
definitely handle it.
Yeah. What are some things that you did? I think you're younger than us. You're like in your late 20s, right? Like, what are some things that you did that like set this thing off? Yeah, I'll brag for you. It's fine.
I mean, honestly, one of the biggest things that I feel is just to start. I mean, and I felt it myself, and I've seen it, with even friends where it gets so easy to get stuck in the planning and designing stage of something and not actually just start doing it. And I had it early on, even when I was just building. I did initially, build the RentRedi product. And so early on, I was trying to build like every feature under the sun and make it absolutely perfect before I would let anybody sign up. And so, we had what was definitely a workable product well before we let anybody actually use it. Because, I was just trying to shoot for perfection instead of giving somebody something that made their life 20% better, and then worry about making it 30 and 40 and 50 and 80 and 100% better as we went along. And so that was honestly one of the biggest things for me starting out, was just start with something, that minimum viable product that solves the problem, and then worry about iterating and getting feedback on that and improving it as I went along.
Was it Mark Cuban who said like, I don't know if it was him, but it was like he put out a product to the marketplace before you even had it made. Was it him?
To test it.
Yeah, to test it. And like he's like getting all these orders and he's like, okay, I guess I got to go make this thing now.
But now I know what they want.
Yeah,
it was like almost putting it out there. Or I forget.
I don't know if it was Mark Cuban, but
it was. Here's one. Some people put out a few different names of a company in like a graphic, right? And they would pump it all out, and it was the same exact company, but like or the same product, and it had just a different branding. And whatever people drove to the most, that's the one they picked. And they were like, okay, we know what they want. So it's a nice little spin off that, which I do like. I know we talked about you being young and just starting. And I think that's amazing advice. It's so simple, but it's just a nice reminder for people, right? Like you can spend days, hours, years of just planning, and then life hits you and it just never happens, right? So starting and making it incrementally better through trial runs. I love that. So thanks for bringing that up. Now, can you walk us through maybe the most difficult thing or I guess maybe speed bump that you incurred to get it off the ground? Because I know it's like one thing to start, but you're talking about building an app. And I think people also tend to forget, like, it takes a lot of money to start a business sometimes too. So I want to talk about like some hiccups you had along the way to get this thing off the ground, and then how you initially funded the company.
Yeah. So in terms of the early building, it was definitely a learning process. I had minored in computer science, but I certainly didn't know a lot of the things that we needed to build it. I ended up taking mostly online courses or free resources that were things like Codecademy and Treehouse, these different, programming websites that let you take things. Then eventually, going to things like YouTube videos of people that were teaching me how to do different things I wanted to figure out how to do. And that eventually, got me to a point where I could build a workable product. In terms of the funding side, it's kind of funny because, my co-founder and myself didn't really have any connections at all to the investment world. It seemed a little bit daunting at the time. We actually went to a conference, Tech Day New York at the time, that candidly, I didn't even think we should be going to. I thought we were too early on in terms of traction and users. And he said, let's just go. It would be fun to do, if nothing else. And so we went there. I did get to pitch on the stage there. We had someone come over to our booth. Younger guy himself, so never discounted. And he said, I work at a company that's more C and D stage funding, which is much later stage venture funding. They basically work in like series, so you do like maybe a friends and family round, and then a seed round, and then A, B, C, and D. So he's like 5 or 6 rounds beyond where we were looking at the time. And I left that conversation really just saying, if there's anybody that that might be interested, I'd love to talk to them. And we kind of left it at that. I followed up with him maybe 1 or 2 times, and he ended up connecting me to the person that became the lead for our first venture round. And that was, they ended up, looping in or making introductions to most everyone that ended up investing after that.
You just never know.
Well, it just proves you just go to, okay. Imposter syndrome. You guys are like, nah, I don't think we should go. Maybe, right. But it'll be fun at the least, right? Then you get on the stage, you were able to pitch, and then you didn't get a no. You got kind of a maybe, we'll see, but you asked for the referral, which is sales 101. Brilliant. It's just like, okay, yeah, you might not be interested right now, but do you have anyone in your network that might be? And clearly he took a liking to you, right? It's a relationship business. Business is a relationship business, if you will, right? Like everything is these days. So you sold yourself, which is awesome. And I just think it's incredible. And then you just keep chugging along, right? I love your, like, I'm thinking like I said this in a previous episode.
Diamond thing.
Love this. I love this analogy with this guy that's like, he's digging into mine and he just keeps chugging away. And you see the diamond so close, and then one dude gives up and he just turns away. And then the next swing, the guy unleashes the diamond. So it just reminds me of you taking baby steps along the way. And it's awesome that you've become so successful from it, and you're just a young guy. So
yeah, very cool. Do you want to talk? I mean, that was really good advice. I think we could talk about RentRedi, maybe even more specifically, and like the logo and how you came up with the
name, everything.
The name, the logo, like the just the brand behind it. I think maybe people end up spending too much time trying to figure that out, but tell us your story.
The name and the logo. Honestly, that I actually found recently. It's funny you bring that up. I had an old textbook that I still have, and I opened it recently, found an old napkin that has like one of my first sketches of RentRedi.
Oh, so you were the artist as well?
I'm very excited about it. Maybe a few weeks ago that I found it. It's got to be, half a decade old at this point. So honestly, the way we came up with the name and the logo was just me and my co-founder talking at a restaurant and scribbling down different names on the back of a napkin, trying to figure out what would make sense to people in terms of what we were trying to accomplish. We went very literal with the name. I mean, I was trying to make, it easier to be ready to rent an apartment as a tenant. So RentRedi made a lot of sense. We spelt it wrong because we're a startup and you have to spell things wrong. It's almost like a credibility badge, I feel like. So I think that's how we pretty much landed on the name.
That's crazy. It's funny how things happen on the back of napkins. We also interviewed Seth Berger, who was the co-founder of And1. I don't know if you're a hoops guy.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
He and his buddies drew the initial logo at a restaurant on the back of a napkin. And you're the second guy that we've interviewed that's done that. It's amazing.
They say like back of the napkin math, or like it's a real thing. That's my guy, Seth. So that's funny that you made that connection, because I forgot about that. And like how many companies were started at a restaurant on the back of a napkin?
We got to go out to eat more, dude. That's amazing. So I don't want to discredit this too, because you mentioned it a few times, like, oh, I built the app and like I worked on this. Like a lot of people, to many, including me, myself, and Corey, that's pretty daunting. Like, and insane that you have the skills to build an app, right? Like you can go on the app on your phone, right? And you see this whole marketplace of things. And I'm always curious of like, wow, like what actually goes into something from like creation to launch? I know there's probably so many different stages you could take us through, but right. I guess if you could summarize it from like the inception to launch, and just so someone can conceptualize like, wow, like that's really what goes into building an app.
Yeah. So from inception to launch, I mean, so when I had the first idea, I knew I wanted to build an app, which it does matter if you want to decide between building like a website, which a lot of the time, if you're building there, they'll call them web apps now, but they're basically fancier websites, or you want to build like a native app on someone's phone. I wanted to build a native app because I just felt like for the application process, or as from my experience of what I wanted to do, it was easier to just like take photos of different things. I didn't have a printer to scan like my W-2. So I could take a photo of it if I put an app on my phone. So that was why I went that route. And then you have to decide if you're going to build an iOS or an Android one. For me, I decided I wanted to build iOS because I had an iPhone. So I needed to learn this language called Swift. I originally started with these Codecademy courses that were free, which was great. Eventually got to the end of those. Found another one that was paid, $20 a month, and started doing these treehouse ones and went through a bunch of courses with those. And then I started going to YouTube videos and building out different pieces of that. And then eventually I got to a point where I was able to start building something I wasn't finding in a YouTube video. And that's where then I, really started building a product. And when I got stuck, I could go to, there were like forums, in which in the case of developers was Stack Overflow. And I could ask a question. I could say, I'm trying to build, I have this camera app on my phone. I want to let people auto crop the document so it doesn't look like they took a photo of their W-2 on the side of the bed. And so I could go in and say, I'm trying to, find the corners of a piece of paper through this camera using this. This is what I've tried. This is how I expected it to work. It's still not working. Can anybody help with this? And one of the really cool things, one of my favorite things about the developer community is people are so willing to help each other. And I think it's true for a lot of them. I think the landlord community is very much the same. Totally. Where you can go on to a forum and say, this is what I'm trying to do. It's not working the way I want it to. Somebody help me out. And a lot of times somebody that's, already gone through the ringer for you can explain how they would approach the situation and help you out. And it's one problem down. I mean, it's a tiny problem in the massive picture of it, but if you can break down that big problem into smaller and smaller pieces, you can kind of attack each of those individual pieces, maybe reach out to some people through forums or podcast or YouTube or something like that to ask questions and somebody will help you out.
I think there's like a common theme I'm hearing here, and it's just people always just see an app and they just assume, or with any finished product, right? And you just see it and you're like, oh, wow, that's pretty cool. That probably took a lot of work. But like hearing you explain it is really cool and motivating for other entrepreneurs and investors out there. Like I think hearing the nitty gritty, like it just gets down to, there's no secret to success. It's just hard work and dedication and self-education, right? Like
right.
You're a
like
smart
you're not
guy.
A wizard, bro, but you like figured it out, it's like,
he's a smart guy, but he's not the smartest guy in the world. You know what I'm saying? Like you went and you found a lane and you just kept peeling back the layers, learning more. And instead of stopping when you hit the road bump, you just powered through, or you went around and you asked someone else. And I just think like that is important to talk about, because you've seen success with it, and it's something completely different than investing that we talk about every day, but it's so synonymous. It's the same thing.
It's not that different. It's really not that different. And it's like, it's anything in business. It's entrepreneurship. And it's like, I have like a question that I want to ask. That's, I guess it's a little bit of a selfish question, but about like your business and how it could potentially affect our business. I'm curious how this is, I guess, getting a little bit deeper, but how do you balance projects and prioritize big items that come up? Because Ryan, I was thinking about this today. I'm like, man, I have so many things to do for the businesses that I'm trying to build. How do I focus on these bigger ticket items and prioritize my time? And I realize we just transitioned a little bit, but what do you think like are the important things that you're able to focus on that help take RentRedi and your business to the next level? Like,
how do you cut things out, right? And prioritize the actual most important things?
Yeah. I think it's a combination of like how badly is it needed? How many people is it impacting? And how much time or work does it take to make it happen? So like if I have a problem that takes a ton of work and only one person is impacted by it and it doesn't impact them very much, that's going to the bottom of the list. If I have something that, takes very little time, is impacting everybody, and it's, destroying their business in some sort of way, that's right now, everything else needs to stop and just do that. And I think everything else kind of slots somewhere in the middle where, you have maybe, 5 or 6, or it depends on the business in terms of the quantity, but, whether it's 5 or 50 or 500, depending on whatever you're looking at, people that are impacted by it, and then how much it's hurting their business. And then, is it going to take you a week to do this? Is it going to take you a day to do it? That's kind of how we prioritize everything we do. And in our particular case, it's coming through chat. But I think if, you're owning any business or doing anything, your customers are always telling you what's wrong, or whether it's related to you or just in general. And how maybe you could possibly make it better. So I think as long as you're recording what that is, and I'm one of the things I really do like doing is us like recording everything that we get back. And so for us, if we get somebody mentioning something in the chat, even if they don't explicitly say, hey, this is a feature request or this is an improvement, they just bring it up. It's something that we can, internally say, okay, this person mentioned this. They're thinking about this, even if it's not even that big of a deal at this point. It's something we might want to think about before it even becomes a big deal. And then if you have a whole bunch of people with that same issue,
that's really cool. That makes me think between like not just consumers, but also like as business partners, right? Like what's a big project that we have together, and that like it may take a long time, but it's impacting all of us rather than just like, oh, it's impacting me. And it just kind of makes me kind of shift priorities a little bit too.
It's a good way to conceptualize it though, for any business, right? I have not heard of that just framework of thinking. So that's really cool.
Yeah. I like that a lot. It's so easy to kick the can down the road on things, right? Like on something that may take a short amount of time, but if that short amount of time is impacting everybody, just get it done, rip the Band-Aid. And even something that's going to take longer, but only impacts you, okay, you let it go down the line a little bit. So it's just a nice little, hearing it out loud is cool.
Totally. I think before we get into RentRedi, specifically their features, we have another just question about you and your life as the CEO of RentRedi, right? So if you could give us maybe just a snapshot, I'm sure that changes all the time, but a snapshot of maybe a day in the life, a daily schedule, if you have any routines, if you have certain projects that maybe that you're working on now, but just give people an idea of what it's like to be Ryan for a day.
That's a hard question.
You can still brushing the teeth. That's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll start with, well, maybe it's a ritual.
I want to hear the morning routine. Yeah. It's
cool. Yeah, I mean, honestly, my morning typically would start off with just like checking if there is anything that has come through from like a customer that is urgent. That really goes to the top. Like I will do that before I shower in the morning. Honestly, I know like some people are like, oh, I'll get out of bed, I'll shower, I'll eat. I will answer like in bed. If something's wrong, you'll get an answer before I get up. So that's kind of like my first thing. Then I'll go get ready for the day. It really does depend on the day. Like Monday, I almost would break it down more so in weeks than I would in days, but like Mondays on the week would be our team catch up. After that is our dev catch up. Then it's kind of anything that, it does change week by week, but projects that we might be working on, some integration, like one of them we recently released was like a lateral partnership. That was for a lot of weeks planning out like, okay, when someone submits a maintenance request, how are we going to transmit that to lateral, get all that synced up back to us? It was basically what we were building with them was kind of like an automated way of doing maintenance without property manager fees. And so that kind of is our planning day, if you will. Friday is kind of the other end of that, which is kind of like the reports days, where, okay, what happened this week? What were our goals? Did we actually hit them? What's the plan for next week? Saturday, Sunday is my catch-up day on anything that I want, which is actually kind of exciting to me sometimes, that it's kind of like a free blank slate day to work on, any project that, like I was saying, you would prioritize like, okay, this is something that a lot of people want. This is something that some don't. Every now and then I'll have a project that like, I would really love to see it happen. I'll slot that for like Saturday if I want. And then everything in the middle is just kind of executing. I think so much when it comes to business is just like doing it well. It's not necessarily, I don't necessarily feel like just because you have the idea first, you're going to be the best at it, nor if you're the last one to enter the market, you're going to be the worst at it. I think so much of it does come down to like how well you actually execute on what you're trying to do. So that I would maybe say that's Tuesday through Thursday, if you will.
That's he said another thing that Seth was saying too. It's just like wild to hear like the entrepreneurial like venture about having an idea. You'd rather have a decent idea and a great team for execution than an amazing idea and an okay team, right? Like the team is going to win every time. Like you're going to bring that idea to market, you're going to crush it. And it's just very cool to hear. You literally mentioned that. And we've heard that from other entrepreneurs.
I appreciate the execution days. Like there's far too many times that I see this in my jobs, like meeting after meeting after meeting, and you're taking away from people's flow time, right? You got to it takes a little bit to get in the rhythm of the day anyways. And you need X amount of hours to power through, and like problems will arise, right? But then you table those for the meetings that you have bookended at the end of the week or whatever, however you set your schedule. But I think far too often people will try to brainstorm and talk strategy, and nothing ever gets done because you have all these great ideas, but no one's doing them. So, and obviously it can be vice versa too, whereas you're going and going and going, but you're running in circles and you have no idea why you're doing anything. So I kind of
inverse on the business, but it's very, very cool. Thank you for the breakdown. I think, let's talk RentRedi more in a little bit more detail here. Like Ryan, I mentioned it in the beginning of the show. This is as candid as it gets. We love using the app. We love RentRedi. It works perfectly for our business. We have 7 units. Like, so whether that changes, if we have 50 or 100, I don't know, but I'm sure you're trying to prevent that from happening. And you want it to be maybe, or maybe you don't, but like, give us a little bit of like your valuable features that maybe talk about lateral. What are some of the things that you're bringing to market right now, or you just have that you feel like are ready to make a difference?
Yeah. So, I mean, one of them, and I'll preface all of them with a little piece of it, which is that, I mean, so much of this, I feel like you have to choose between having a lot of time and no money, or a lot of money and no time. Like if you go the property manager route, like you got all of your time back, but you lost all your profit. If you go the spreadsheet route, you have all your time, or you have all the profit, but none of your time. I mean, you're just pulling your hair out and going gray. So our goal is to kind of bridge the gap between those two. And so a lot of these have a common goal, just in doing it in different ways. So the lateral one was a big piece of it. So, I mean, we were hearing, this goes back to like summer of last year. We had a lot of landlords that were coming in saying, you pretty much streamlined the rent collection side of things, which was a pain for me when I showed up, which is why, a big reason I chose it. It's all automated. Once I'm set up, I'm happy. However, now I'm getting in maintenance requests from these tenants that are in my unit, and I have to go find somebody. And then honestly, maybe I don't have somebody that handles that, or maybe I don't have somebody at all. Or maybe I live in a state away. I'm a remote landlord. And so for all of these different cases, they were having trouble finding the right person or sending them over, making sure it was all set. And so they were saying to us, is there a way that you can make it feel like, I basically did offload this to a property manager without me losing that, 8 to 12%. And so what we did was we, found Lateral, we talked with them. They previously only would even accept landlords over 75 units, which, as you guys know, I mean, that misses a huge chunk of the market still. And that's pretty much, who we're trying to help most. And so we said, hey, let us do some legwork. We'll make it really easy for these people to onboard their properties so that you guys don't have to worry about that, because that was a big challenge for them too. And so pretty much a landlord can come onto the platform, enable this feature. And when a maintenance request comes in, we work with them to basically transmit all the information back and forth to find the right vendor, send them, schedule with the tenant, both sides market complete. So you don't end up with like a vendor that says it's done and a tenant that says it's not, or vice versa. And then updating that all on the landlord side so that, you're not in the dark just because you're not doing it. You still get that oversight, even though you're not necessarily doing any of the work.
So I truly believe that this partnership that you have with Latchel is a game changer. And I'm not just saying this. I think that when I found out about this, I was thinking to myself, there's a reason why landlords fail. And one of the biggest reasons why they fail is because they don't have the communication to understand that their tenant is their business, right? Like if you don't know how to fix things yourself, one, I don't think you should fix things yourself as a landlord, because then you can't focus on maybe the items that help you bring you more deals and scaling and stuff like that. But Latchel really gives us the ability to say, okay, our maintenance requests, which for me are the biggest pain in my ass that I have to deal with, because I want to focus on a quality product and then scaling. And having somebody to be that middleman, so to speak, is truly helping us shift our business from all the day-to-day things that are working in it to working on it. So I really love Latchel, and I actually we just like got going with it, and we haven't had a request, but I'm really excited about having the call not come to me.
Yeah, I was gonna say, of course, when you sign up, then they stop calling.
Yeah, no,
it's
exactly.
Brilliant. But I totally agree. I would say it's a game changer. And I think this is, in my opinion, one of the reasons, or one of the competitive advantages that sets you apart, right? Like this truly has been the biggest headache for us, is like dealing with that middleman and like making 2 separate calls, confirming it's done, confirming they showed up, everything. Oh, is it just a bowl situation under the sink where you have to tighten a screw? Like we've had that exact thing happen to us. And if we had Latchel, it would have been perfectly taken care of. Right. So, before we talk new upcoming features, hoping you can give us a little like sneak peek of things to come, but can you just give us like a brief rundown? Like we talk about it all the time, but to hear it from the CEO's mouth, like the top 5 features of RentRedi that people that they're like listening to the show and they're like, hey, listen, like this sounds like it might be something that I want to jump on. Like, what are the actual features? Like, what does the app even do?
Yeah. So, rent payments, obviously maintenance that we've been talking about, listing the unit, lease signing, applications, tenant screening, even pre-qualifications, which again was another one from landlords on the platform that said, I don't want someone to pay for a screening when I could have told them up front that there was no way I could accept them as a tenant. And then automating a lot of those things. So, I mean, at a high level, they may sound similar to things that people are doing, but one of the big things that we try to focus on is how can we cut out a lot of the manual tasks that you would normally have to do with each of those things, that becomes, basically all you have to do is set up like your preferences is the ideal way. And you don't have to necessarily be doing, nearly as much of the actual work.
Perfect. I think people underestimate the importance or the ease of having an app rather than having to log onto a computer. Like for me, that's what I love. I can just literally tap of a button, go through, check if someone paid, can send a push notification for someone. Hey, just a heads up, haven't received your rent payment. It's due tomorrow. There's a late fee if you don't get it. And it just pops up on their phone. Like it's insane to me, like how technology has evolved. And I think we're lucky to use it. And I think it's way better than the system we had before. I'm not going to bash anyone, but I think it's just quick, easy, on the fly. And that's what you want. And that's where the world is going. So
yeah. And one other thing real quick to talk about another feature that like about the cash payments that you guys just added in, which I thought is very cool because I have some tenants personally, not in the business that Ryan and I have together that pay in cash. And and so for me, they're great tenants. So I'm not trying to not have them as tenants, right? But if you move into a digital world, it seems that it gets hard to keep those tenants because they just get left behind. So having the ability to go stop at Walgreens or 7-Eleven and deposit cash and then hit that it was in the app that it was deposited makes my life easier because I was never going to go pick up in cash anyway. So I was trying to figure out ways like what I was doing before, realistically, I was opening up a separate bank account with a different bank that accepted cash because no banks do it anymore. And then as soon as it hit, I would transfer it. And I'm like, this is like taking too much of my manual labor, like in a way.
Way too much time.
Yeah. So that's a very cool thing too, as well. But I've just figured I'd mention it.
It's awesome. Can you give us, maybe we're overstepping here a little bit, but any sneak previews on maybe future integrations or things that added features that could be coming down the pipe here?
Or that you're thinking of, maybe.
Yeah.
Give us to get inside the mind.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely let you inside that. And a little part of it we've alluded to already. And a big part of it is that like time versus money aspect and how much can you automate? I think we can automate a lot more of the process and even more than people realize. Like so much of it, even when you go to, and like, I like to look at it this way because like, if you were to hire somebody, right, to start doing the job for you, you would have to tell them what to do. You have to say like, hey, an application that comes in that has, between this credit score and that credit score, it's not good enough, or it is good enough. Or, smoking or pets or whatever it may be, that's okay, or that's not okay. All these different things you would have to tell different people. Like you were saying, Ryan, about when you send the notification to somebody, like, are you going to do that a day before, 2 days before? You're going to notify them every single day that they're late. So a lot of these are things that we're thinking about and planning on doing where we're taking parts of the funnel that you maybe have internalized as like, this is what I do on the 2nd of the month, 3rd of the month to notify somebody, or when I'm screening someone before I come in. And can you just basically teach the platform what you would teach anybody else you would hire? And then the platform pretty much would just run it for you as much as possible, or
that's pretty
much
cool.
to your comfort level.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So almost essentially like setting a day and time that X goes out, right? And you don't even have to push it through yourself, something like that.
Right.
Really like that. Cool.
Very cool. You think we're
down to the
headed
core four?
to the core four? Let's do it.
Yeah. So this part of the show is for us to get to know you a little bit better, see how you tick, and I guess let listeners into the mind a little bit of Rye. So first question, super basic. What is your favorite investing, business, or entrepreneurship book?
So I would have to say 0 to 1. And it's funny, you brought up like some other companies before, and we were talking about, like first to market, last to market. One of my favorite things from that book is actually talking about like each of those things. One of the really interesting things in it is that at least Peter Thiel, who's the author of the book, his perspective of it is that each thing only happens once. So like Bill Gates founded Microsoft, obviously, but like the next Bill Gates isn't going to make an operating system. The next Mark Zuckerberg isn't going to make a social media site. And so in a lot of ways, if you're kind of like copying what that person has done, you're not learning from those people. Like you can learn from them, but do something totally new, which makes it kind of fun because in a lot of ways, probably different people listening have different interests. Like for me, mine was not social media. It was very much more on the, real estate and trying to make this perfect experience for everybody that was renting a property. And so I think it's really cool to think of it in that perspective. And it talks a lot about especially that early stage of, well, even from the name of 0 to 1, like that, very, very early stage of getting to something. How do you get from just absolutely nothing that exists to your initial thing that you can start improving?
That's cool. I haven't heard anybody say that on the show. And we use the analogy of the snowball in real estate investing specifically, because it's like having going from 7 properties or 7 units to 15 is 20 times as easier than going from 0 to 2. Like, it's not even
0
close.
to 1.
0 to 1. It's not even close. 0 to 1 is 10 times harder than 1 than 1 to 2. And it's like, okay, I need the book. All right.
I mean, it's in the title, bro.
I'm getting the book. All right, great. Cool. Second question of the core 4 is, what has been your biggest mistake in your entrepreneurship life? How have you learned from it?
I think I already unfortunately jumped the gun on it. I mean, don't get stuck. That was the biggest one for me. It was just like, don't get stuck in the planning phase, like do something. It's okay that it's not something perfect, or you haven't thought about every edge case, or run every metric on what could possibly go right or wrong in different situations. Just kind of get going with it, roll with the punches, learn, everything that goes wrong. Most of the time you can fix it. It's pretty rare that something goes so wrong that you look back and say, wow, I shouldn't have started. I don't think even to this day I've ever felt like that. So I would just, don't get bogged down, start something. It's okay to mess up.
Totally. We relate this to investing too. And it's like, I thought about this and it framed it in like, what's the worst thing that could happen in our investing journey? And it's like, I guess you could buy a really bad deal, but if you understand the numbers, that's not going to happen. Like, the worst thing that could happen is, I guess, your house your property burns down. And it's like, well, you have insurance for that. And it's like, there's a lot of things that mitigate the risk along the way. And I think there's a fear that sets in that just really comes from almost like imagination. And I think that putting things out there and doing them before you have all the answers is very cool. It's a very cool sentiment. So
yeah, we things happen all the time in real estate investing and entrepreneurship in general. But Corey and I are always on the phone, and we'll talk in circles sometimes about like how we can get out of a certain situation or like work around it. And all of it comes down to, things can be fixed in real estate very easily or very hard. It just depends how much money you have. Because like, if you have the dough, you can figure the situation out. It's like finding how much you are actually willing to spend to get out of it, and like finding the cheapest way out, but the most efficient way. So, and I think that's in life in general, and like getting businesses off the ground. So it's funny to talk about. Question number 3 is, who is your who for 2021? And by meeting this person, you feel like your life and business will be propelled to the next level. And if you don't have anyone in mind for who you're aspiring to meet, maybe someone that you've met in your past that has helped you essentially take your business and launch it off the ground.
Interesting. This may break the rules of what I'm allowed to answer to this question, but I think
I know where you're going.
I'll give it to you anyway. Honestly, I think I don't know the who of the person. Right now, we're expanding our team, and even looking backwards, like, we would not be where we are today without a lot of the people that have joined our team over especially the past 2 years. So I think very likely the next 2 that I'll meet in 2021 that will completely change like our business or impact our business in a way that I won't be able to really imagine until it happens is going to be, someone that's filling these different places that we're looking to bring people on for. So it's a really exciting experience to look back and say, oh, if we didn't hire person X, we would not be where we are right now.
It's great. Everyone plays a role. Think about it. Like it's essentially every little person is a domino, right? And it helps them all fall. But I'm just thinking back to you guys fighting through imposter syndrome and just showing up to the expo or whatever it was, and meeting that one investor, right? Or the venture capitalist. Like, that was like the first domino to fall, right? And then look at you now. So it's hard to look back, but I think us young people, we don't do a great job of it yet, because we're not too old where you have so much time to look back, but like reminiscing and thinking about like how far you've come in X amount of time, there are those people along the way that prove to be pivotal roles or play pivotal roles in your life. And it's important to, thank them and go back and be like, wow, I thought about you today. Like, thanks for helping me get to where I am.
I try to do that all the time. Like, pick a day a week to think about people that have helped me get to where I am and haven't gone that far, but to wherever I'm going next. So, very cool. Very cool. So last question of our core 4, a little bit philosophical, but I'm curious what your answer is. What do you want your legacy to be, Ryan, when you look back, I don't know, maybe in 30, 40 years?
Yeah. This is fun. I would say, honestly, for me, when you're like a kid and you go to like someone's house or you go somewhere, like your parents will tell you, like, leave the place better than you found it. Father time wins with everybody at some point. So I know I'm going at some point. So I mean, for me, the legacy would just be that like people look back and say, like, Ryan left this world, this place better than he found it, a lot better than he found it. Any way I can do that, I consider that a success. That to me is kind of like the overarching goal for myself.
Wonderful.
Not that I didn't know, but just found out Ryan's a good guy. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's like, I really like that answer. It mirrors my own. I think it's very cool and admirable. So thank you for that. We've reached the last segment of the show. It's called The Last Drop. And this question essentially is, if you could go back in time and give maybe, I don't know, seeing as you are pretty young, maybe like 15, 16-year-old Ryan some advice, knowing what you know now, what would you give him?
Probably try more things. I think when I started to get more into college, that was kind of like my time where there was a time where I just like joined every club. I ended up like double majoring minors because I just wanted to try and do everything. I don't think I really had that mentality when I was a little younger. And I think I probably would have really enjoyed it. I felt very much like I had to like know the one thing that I loved. Like people, I think, talk a lot about like, ooh, find your passion. And it's like singular. Like there has to be one passion you have to find. And I really think that there are definitely a small subset of people that like know their whole life what they want to do. And that's awesome if you happen to be one of those people. But I think for a lot of people, and myself included in that, you kind of find something that you just end up loving to do. And to figure that out, you kind of have to try a whole bunch of things and say, okay, I liked this part of that, but not that. Can I find something that keeps the good part of it, but not the bad part of it? And then you try the next thing that, okay, it did get rid of the bad part, but this has this other new thing that I don't like. So I have to find another one that has these two, but not that third bad thing. And you kind of just eventually start moving closer and closer to something that feels almost, I mean, nothing will be perfect, but it's a little closer to perfect as you go along.
I tell this advice to my brother all the time. He's 19. I say, dude, you got to just do a bunch of stuff. Like he's like, well, what should I major in? I'm like, it doesn't matter really. Like It really doesn't matter. Just like you'll narrow it down as you go. Like just say yes, be a yes man, and just do a bunch of stuff. Keep having that open mind, keep meeting people, keep creating lasting relationships. And like where you end up is where you're meant to be. Like, so it's a similar way that probably some of the advice I would tell myself is, being younger.
I think it's great advice because almost on like a resume, right? It's the world doesn't know how to explain it well enough, but people always look for, hey, what activities are you more involved in on your resume, right? Because then they know you've had life skills in a bunch of different segments, right? And you're like more apt to be great at this job or intrinsically motivated. But going back to like a 15 to 18-year-old person, right? Like people just follow trends and do things that are cool, right? Like you might be super interested in something, but your friend's like, dude, that thing's lame. Why are you going to try that? And then you don't try it. And that sucks. And then you get down the line, you're like, wow, like maybe like a missed dream, right? Or like missed something that you could have fallen in love with. And my younger brother's 22 and just a little bit older than yours. And I tell him all the same things. I'm like, dude, don't worry about like what your major is or like where you see your life going right now. Cause I'm telling you, it's going to take a left turn. It's going to take a right turn. Just get involved, try different things. And like, don't be afraid if someone doesn't think it's cool. Cause if you like it, it's great. And so, I just think it's great advice. We haven't had that on the show yet. So I appreciate it.
Awesome. I guess the next question is, how can people learn more about RentRedi or maybe you specifically? You don't have to give out your email or anything, but what's the best way for people to learn about RentRedi or potentially get in touch with you if they're like interested in, I don't know, building an app or entrepreneurship in general?
Yeah. I mean, in terms of RentRedi, so I mean, we have a Instagram, YouTube, RentRedi. I mean, we spell it wrong again. We're a startup, so just forgive us for not spelling it right. But, and then, we try to post different content on each of those any way you prefer, wherever you like to go. In terms of reaching out to me, I mean, LinkedIn, mine's open. You can just like request and send me a message. So
Perfect.
If you want to do it, I'll respond. I like helping people. So I will actually respond if you reach out. And then,
Great. We'll make sure to link it in the show notes and we'll get people in touch. But Ryan, it's been a pleasure, man. We're obviously thankful to be partners, but just to get to know you a little bit better and like the man behind the company is very cool. I mean, you seem like a great person. You got your head on straight and just, you've built something awesome that honestly we just love and we use, and it helps us elevate our business. And I'm proud to call myself a RentRedi fan and user.
That's right. Couldn't have said it any better. We really appreciate your time.
I appreciate you guys having me.